breaking in one of the most extraordinary, unpredictable, and politically explosive developments ever witnessed inside the British Parliament. The House of Commons was thrown into absolute pandemonium today as Nigel Farage delivered what is already being described by political analysts, veteran correspondents, and even stunned MPs as the most devastating parliamentary takedown of a sitting Prime Minister in modern UK history. A moment so blistering, so unprecedented in its intensity, and so consequential in its potential fallout that the very foundations of the government appeared to tremble as Farage rose from the opposition benches holding a thick manila folder stamped "Confidential" in red ink, preparing to unleash revelations that would send shockwaves across Westminster, destabilize the highest levels of Downing Street, and ignite a crisis with national and potentially international implications. Just after noon, the chamber, initially calm, almost routine, shifted into an atmosphere of electric tension when Farage began speaking with a measured, surgical precision that instantly commanded silence, and within seconds, the session erupted into chaos as he accused Prime Minister Keir Starmer of personally intervening to block deportation flights in a calculated attempt to maintain favorable approval ratings with activist groups, an allegation so severe that Starmer's face reportedly drained of color. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner froze in shock, and murmurs rippled through the chamber with the velocity of a shockwave tearing through a crowd unprepared for impact. According to senior parliamentary reporters present at the scene, what followed was not merely a political confrontation but a complete dismantling of the government's credibility as Farage began producing documents, internal memos, leaked WhatsApp messages, photographic evidence, and even audio recordings, all of which he claimed directly implicated the Prime Minister in actions that, if verified, could constitute a profound abuse of power, triggering investigations that might end his premiership within days. The pivotal moment occurred at precisely 2:47 p.m., when Farage held aloft a leaked Home Office memo dated November 15, which he said bore Starmer's own signature, authorizing the cancellation of 3 deportation flights, scheduled to remove 347 illegal migrants, at a documented cost to taxpayers of more than £4.2 million in unused logistical preparations. These are your words, Prime Minister, your decision, your signature, your betrayal, Farage declared, his voice rising above the escalating chaos as Labour MPs shouted objections. Conservative MPs howled in disbelief, and the Speaker struggled in vain to restore order. Desperate to respond, Starmer attempted to interject, but Farage cut him off with a second, even more explosive revelation: an alleged WhatsApp message sent from the Prime Minister to Home Secretary Yvette Cooper stating, "Kill the Rwanda flights. I don't care about the optics. Our base will revolt if we deport anyone before the May elections," a message so politically devastating that it sent shockwaves through both the government and the press gallery. At this point, Rachel Reeves buried her face in her hands. David Lammy stood up and walked out of the chamber, and several Labour MPs appeared visibly shaken. The atmosphere deteriorated further as Farage produced a stack of photographs which he claimed depicted the 347 individuals whose deportations were blocked, noting that 73 had criminal convictions, 12 were convicted of violent assault, 4 had sexual offense charges, and 1 individual had an attempted murder record. The uproar that followed was described by veteran journalists as unlike anything heard in the Commons since the expenses scandal, with MPs shouting shame and resign, while several senior Labour figures, reportedly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the revelations, were seen in tears. Outside Westminster, the nation reacted with equal shock and outrage as Farage's disclosures coincided with new reports highlighting the deteriorating situation of British military veterans now homeless across several major cities, including Birmingham, Manchester, and Liverpool, many of whom are sleeping on the streets or in tents while the government spends billions annually housing illegal migrants in hotels some as luxurious as the Hilton Westminster, where rooms come equipped with underfloor heating, Egyptian cotton bedding, round-the-clock translators, and taxpayer-funded meals. Among the most heart-wrenching examples cited was the case of decorated veteran James Morrison, who lost his leg in Helmand Province and now receives just £823 per month in disability payments, while migrants, according to leaked documents, receive nearly £2,100 in taxpayer support. The juxtaposition of heroic veterans freezing beneath bridges while non-citizens receive premium accommodation triggered outrage among the public, amplified online by millions of posts and shared videos showing the grim conditions veterans are facing nationwide. Meanwhile, Rightmove and other housing market analysts reported a sudden 12% Spike in property listings within 2 hours of Farage's speech, attributed to investors panicking over looming political instability. Markets plummeted as the pound dropped 1.3% against the dollar and FTSE futures fell sharply. Economics correspondents reported that Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs issued urgent advisories warning investors of potential UK government collapse, while Bank of England officials called an emergency meeting for early tomorrow morning. But the true bombshell of the day came moments later when Farage produced an audio recording allegedly captured at Chequers, where Starmer could be heard discussing with advisors how to strategically conceal the true scale of migration numbers from the public until after the May elections, including a statement attributed to Starmer saying, "We need to hide the real figures, tell the press anything, but keep the actual numbers buried." Even more explosive was another alleged quote from Starmer's advisor, Morgan McSweeney, admitting that migration was nearing 800,000 for the year, and that if that gets out, we're finished. Starmer could then be heard replying, "Use notices if necessary. Just make sure it doesn't get out." The chamber erupted as Labour MPs stood shouting objections, and Lindsay Hoyle attempted to intervene, but Farage continued with what he called the final and most damning piece of evidence he claimed to possess: security camera video allegedly showing individuals linked to the Prime Minister's office coordinating with people smugglers to time migrant boat arrivals for minimum media exposure, an allegation so shocking that reporters gasped, MPs screamed liar, and government ministers immediately demanded proof. But Farage calmly stated he would be turning the evidence over to the Metropolitan Police within the hour. The reaction beyond Parliament was instantaneous and explosive. Massive crowds gathered outside Westminster, with early estimates placing attendance at 15,000. Put aerial footage suggesting closer to 25,000, chanting liar, resign, an election now. Within minutes, simultaneous protests erupted in Birmingham, 8,000 people, Manchester 12,000, and Liverpool, where dock workers reportedly walked off the job, declaring they could no longer support a corrupt government that betrayed the working people of Britain. Meanwhile, inside Number 10, sources described scenes of outright collapse, ministers yelling, advisors crying, and senior cabinet members turning on each other in what one insider described as a political bloodbath. Reports emerged that Chancellor Rachel Reeves threw a mug at the wall during an emergency meeting, accusing Starmer of destroying the entire party. David Lammy allegedly declared his political career over. Wes Streeting was reportedly in tears, stating his constituents would never forgive him. WhatsApp groups among Labour MPs leaked within minutes, with messages such as "Every man for himself now," "Save yourselves," and "Resignation letter ready." Even loyalists began fleeing, with Starmer's own parliamentary private secretary drafting a resignation letter and several prominent ministers quietly contacting journalists to distance themselves from the Prime Minister. Angela Rayner was reported to be quietly preparing for a possible leadership bid, holding meetings with more than a dozen MPs in a Westminster restaurant, openly discussing transition strategies. Meanwhile, Reform UK saw a membership surge of historic proportions, more than 127,000. New members joined within 12 hours, crashing the party's website multiple times and overwhelming phone lines across the country. Polls shifted dramatically as Reform UK surged to 31%, overtaking Labour, which collapsed to 22%. With internal polls suggesting Labour could fall as low as 18%, the lowest in party history. Some projections placed Farage within striking distance of forming a government should an election be called. Bookmakers updated odds to place Farage as the likely next Prime Minister by Easter, while analysts on Sky News and GB News described today as the day the political map of Britain changed forever. The constitutional implications reached new heights when sources at Windsor Castle claimed King Charles was deeply concerned by the gravity of the situation, reportedly stating that the crisis threatened the stability of government itself. Experts suggested the monarch could be forced to intervene should the government lose a confidence vote and the political situation descend further into instability. A no-confidence motion has already been tabled and is expected to trigger internal rebellion, with 38 Labour MPs already confirmed to vote against the government and up to 52 considering it. If even 40 rebel, the government falls. As Parliament prepares for what many expect to be one of the most consequential sessions in modern history tomorrow morning, Britain stands on the edge of an unprecedented political reckoning. Analysts are calling this crisis the death of the old political order, a moment when the Labour Party's historic dominance may finally collapse under the weight of internal betrayal, public outrage, and a populist surge unlike anything seen in decades. And at the center of the unfolding storm stands Keir Starmer, a prime minister increasingly isolated, reportedly paralyzed, surrounded by lawyers, refusing calls, skipping meals, and facing what insiders describe as the total implosion of his premiership. The question now dominating headlines, broadcasts, and public conversation is brutally simple. Is this the end of Labour's era? And has Nigel Farage, after decades as an outsider, just become the most powerful political figure in Britain?